Despite the harsh wind and blinding dust, Evelyn Carter stood alone on her small farm, her heart heavy with solitude. The frontier town nearby went about its business, unaware of the quiet strength she possessed. No visitors. No companionship. Just the endless sweep of dust across the barren land. She carried on, determined to maintain the life she and Jacob had built. But then, through the swirling storm, an unfamiliar figure emerged, a Lakota warrior, weary and seeking refuge. She felt a moment of uncertainty. But fate had its own plan. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe if you believe that fate always finds a way. Evelyn Carter lived at the edge of a small frontier town. She was a widow and her life was quiet and simple. Her days were filled with work. She cared for the small farm and animals left behind by her late husband, Jacob. The townspeople knew her as a strong woman. She managed the land alone, maintaining it with care. But she was also very alone. Her days were often silent, with only the sounds of the wind and her animals to keep her company. The town itself was small. It was a place where people knew each other, but Evelyn mostly kept to herself. She did not mind the solitude much. She had grown used to it since Jacob passed. The land around her home was dry and harsh, often covered in dust from the plains. Dust storms were common here, sweeping across the land without warning. One afternoon, the sky started to change. The air grew still and a strange calm settled over the land. Evelyn knew what this meant. A dust storm was coming. She had seen it many times before. The sky turned a dull gray and the wind picked up, carrying with it the promise of the storm. Evelyn moved quickly, securing the barn and tying down anything that could blow away. She brought the animals inside, making sure they were safe. Her chickens clucked nervously, sensing the change in the air. The horses in the stable were restless, their ears twitching at the sound of the wind picking up speed. Inside her small house, Evelyn closed the windows tight, trying to keep the dust out. The storm was close now. She could feel it. The walls of the house creaked slightly as the wind began to batter them. She lit a lamp in the dim light, preparing for the long night ahead. As the storm hit, the world outside disappeared. Dust and sand whipped against the house, making everything seem far away. The wind howled, a constant roar that filled the air. Evelyn sat by the fire, trying to read, but the noise made it hard to focus. Then came an unexpected sound. A faint knocking on the door. At first, Evelyn thought she imagined it. Who would be out in a storm like this? But then it came again, a soft but persistent knock. It was unusual and alarming. She stood up, unsure of what she would find on the other side. Evelyn hesitated for a moment, her hand on the door. Her mind raced with possibilities. It could be someone from town in trouble or perhaps a traveler caught in the storm. She took a deep breath and opened the door. There, standing in the swirling dust, was a man. He looked exhausted and worn, his clothes covered in dirt. Evelyn recognized him as a Lakota warrior. His presence surprised her. There was tension between the settlers and the Native Americans in the area, and Evelyn had always been cautious. But the man was clearly in need. He was injured, leaning heavily against the doorframe. His eyes met hers, full of a quiet plea for help. Despite her hesitation, Evelyn felt a tug of compassion. She remembered Jacob and his belief in kindness. He would have helped anyone in need. Evelyn stepped aside, motioning for him to come in. The man moved slowly, clearly in pain. She led him to a chair by the fire, where he sank down with a sigh. The warmth of the room surrounded him, a stark contrast to the cold, biting storm outside. She fetched a basin of water and a cloth, tending to his wounds as best she could. The man watched her, his expression a mix of wariness and gratitude. Evelyn worked carefully, her hands steady. She was used to dealing with injuries from tending her animals, and this was not so different. She offered him some food, simple bread and stew, which he accepted with a nod. They sat in silence, the only sound the crackling fire and the storm outside. Evelyn glanced at him, noting the lines of exhaustion on his face. She wondered what had brought him here, to her door, in the middle of a storm. The man's presence was both unsettling and oddly comforting. It had been a long time since Evelyn had shared her space with another person. She found herself curious about his story, but she respected his silence. There would be time for questions later, once the storm had passed. As the night wore on, the storm showed no sign of letting up. The house shook slightly with each gust of wind, but it held firm. Evelyn checked the animals once more, ensuring they were safe and calm. When she returned, she found the man watching her, his eyes thoughtful. They did not speak much that night. Words were not needed. Instead, they shared a quiet understanding, a respect born from necessity. The storm raged outside, but inside there was a sense of peace. Evelyn felt it settle over her, easing the loneliness she carried. The hours passed slowly, but eventually the storm began to lose its strength. The wind lessened, the dust settling back to the ground. The worst of it was over, leaving behind a heavy silence. Evelyn felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She knew there would be work to do come morning, but for now she allowed herself a moment of rest. She glanced at the man who had closed his eyes, his breathing deep and even. He was asleep, finally able to relax in the safety of her home. Evelyn watched him for a moment, feeling a sense of connection that surprised her. She had not expected to find companionship in the midst of a storm, yet here it was. With a soft sigh, Evelyn settled into her own chair, her eyes growing heavy. The world outside was still and quiet, the storm's fury spent. As she drifted off to sleep, Evelyn thought of Jacob, of the kindness he had always shown to others. She hoped she had done right by him tonight. Evelyn knew that when morning came, she would have to face the reality of what had happened. The storm had brought unexpected change to her doorstep. But for now, she allowed herself to rest, comforted by the knowledge that she had helped someone in need. The world outside might be harsh and unforgiving, but inside her small house, there was warmth and safety. Morning arrived quietly after the storm. The world outside was covered in a thin layer of dust, and the air was calm and still. Evelyn woke up in her chair, feeling the stiffness in her back from sleeping upright. She stretched and looked around, remembering the events of the night before. The Lakota warrior was still asleep by the fire. His breathing was steady, and he seemed at peace. Evelyn moved quietly, not wanting to disturb him. She went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, her mind busy with thoughts of the stranger in her home. By the time she returned with food, the man was awake. He sat up slowly, stretching his sore muscles. Evelyn handed him a plate of eggs and bread, which he accepted with a nod. They ate in silence, the warmth of the morning sun slowly filling the room. Evelyn knew she should ask him about his plans. He was a stranger and could not stay indefinitely. But she also felt a sense of responsibility. He was still weak and needed time to heal. She decided to let him stay until he was stronger, at least for a few days. After breakfast, Evelyn went outside to check on the damage from the storm. The barn had held up well, and the animals were unharmed. The dust had settled, leaving the air fresh and clear. She worked to clean up the debris, her mind still on the man inside her house. When she returned, she found him standing by the window looking out at the land. He turned as she entered, his eyes meeting hers with a calm intensity. Now was the time to talk, to understand why he had come to her door. Evelyn approached him carefully. She asked his name, and after a moment he replied. Lakota, he said. A strong name, one that suited him. She nodded, saying her own name in return. They stood there for a moment, the silence between them comfortable. Finally, she asked him why he was here. Lakota paused, considering his words. He told her he was searching for something important. His horse, a companion he had lost in the storm. It was more than just a horse, it was a symbol of his past and his journey. Evelyn listened, her heart softening. She understood how much this meant to him. She remembered Jacob's love for their own animals, how they were like family. She offered to help Lakota search once he was well enough. He nodded, gratitude in his eyes. Over the next few days, Lakota regained his strength. Evelyn watched him, noting the quiet determination in everything he did. He was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. He helped with chores around the farm, moving with a quiet grace that impressed her. Evelyn found herself drawn to his presence. He was different from anyone she had known. His silence was comforting, a contrast to the endless chatter of the town. She felt a sense of peace when he was near, a feeling she had not experienced since Jacob. As they worked together, they began to share small stories. Lakota spoke of his people, the Lakota, and their way of life. He told her about the land they loved, now threatened by settlers. Evelyn listened, her understanding of the world expanding with each story. In return, she spoke of her life with Jacob, of the dreams they had shared. She told him about the farm, how they had built it from nothing. Lakota listened, his eyes soft with understanding. He seemed to know the weight of loss, the struggle to keep moving forward. Their conversations were simple, but they carried a depth that surprised Evelyn. She found herself looking forward to their talks each day, the quiet connection growing between them. She realized that, despite their differences, they shared a bond of resilience and survival. One afternoon, Evelyn decided it was time to search for Lakota's horse. The storm had passed and the land was calm. They set out together, walking across the plains. The sun was bright, casting long shadows on the ground. As they walked, Evelyn saw the land through Lakota's eyes. It was a place of beauty and history, not just a harsh environment to survive. She felt a new appreciation for the world around her, a connection to the land she had not felt before. Nashota led the way, his eyes scanning the horizon. Evelyn followed, trusting his instincts. They walked for hours, the silence between them comfortable. It was a journey of hope, a chance to restore what had been lost. Finally, as the sun began to set, they found the horse. It was grazing near a small stream, unharmed by the storm. Nashota's face broke into a rare smile, relief washing over him. He approached the horse slowly, speaking softly in his own language. Evelyn watched, feeling a sense of joy at the reunion. She understood the bond between Nashota and his horse, the trust and loyalty they shared. It was a reminder of the connections that made life meaningful, the ties that bound people and animals together. As they made their way back to the farm, Evelyn felt a change within herself. She realized that Nashota had brought something new into her life. A sense of purpose, a reminder of kindness and compassion. She felt grateful for his presence, for the unexpected friendship they had formed. Back at the farm, Nashota settled his horse in the stable, ensuring it was safe and comfortable. Evelyn watched him, a sense of peace settling over her. She knew that Nashota would soon leave, continuing his journey. But she also knew that their paths had crossed for a reason. In the days that followed, Evelyn prepared for Nashota's departure. She packed provisions for his journey, wanting to ensure he had everything he needed. Nashota accepted her help, his gratitude clear in his eyes. On the morning of his departure, Evelyn stood by the gate, watching as Nashota prepared to leave. He mounted his horse, pausing to look back at her. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. They had shared something special, a connection that would not be forgotten. Evelyn raised a hand in farewell, her heart full. Nashota nodded, a rare smile on his face. Then, with a gentle nudge, he urged his horse forward. Evelyn watched as they disappeared into the horizon, the land stretching out before them. As she returned to her daily tasks, Evelyn felt a new sense of purpose. She had helped someone in need, and in doing so had found a piece of herself. The world outside was still harsh, but inside her heart there was warmth and hope. The storm had brought change, but it was a change she welcomed. The days passed quietly after Nashota left. Evelyn returned to her routines, tending to her farm and animals. But things felt different now. The land seemed more alive, and her heart felt lighter. She found herself thinking about Nashota often, his stories, and the calm presence he had brought into her life. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Evelyn sat by the fire. The room was warm, the shadows dancing on the walls. In the silence, she thought of the stories Nashota had shared with her. Stories of his people, the Lakota, and their struggles. She remembered the depth in his voice, the way his eyes seemed to see beyond the present. Evelyn had learned much from him. His tales of resilience and courage had touched her deeply. She realized how little she had known about the world outside her farm. Nashota had opened her eyes to a new perspective, one that valued understanding and empathy. She remembered one particular story he had shared. It was about a journey he had taken with his family, a long trek across the plains. They had faced many challenges, but they had supported each other, drawing strength from their bonds. It reminded Evelyn of her own journey with Jacob, the struggles they had overcome together. As she sat by the fire, Evelyn felt a sense of kinship with Nashota. Despite their different backgrounds, they shared a common thread of survival and hope. She wondered where he was now, if he had reached his destination safely. The next day, Evelyn decided to visit the town. She needed supplies and wanted to catch up on any news. The town was small, but it was a hub of activity. People greeted her as she walked down the main street, their faces familiar. At the general store, Evelyn picked up the items she needed. The store owner, Mr. Jenkins, was a friendly man with a bushy mustache. He chatted with her as he tallied up her purchases, his voice full of the latest town gossip. Evelyn listened politely, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought about Nashota and the stories they had shared. She felt a strong urge to talk about them, to share what she had learned. But she knew the townspeople might not understand. Their views were often shaped by fear and prejudice. As she left the store, Evelyn noticed a small group of people gathered by the post office. They were talking animatedly, their voices carrying in the morning air. Curious, she walked over to see what was happening. The townspeople were discussing a recent encounter with a group of Lakota riders. They had passed near the town, causing a stir among the settlers. Some were fearful, others curious. Evelyn listened, her heart quickening at the mention of the Lakota. One man, a rancher named Tom, spoke loudly about the need for caution. He warned of potential danger, his eyes flashing with suspicion. Evelyn felt a pang of frustration. She wanted to speak up, to tell them about Nashota and his kindness. But she hesitated, unsure of how to bridge the gap between their worlds. Later, as she walked back home, Evelyn thought about the conversation. She realized how much fear could distort the truth. The townspeople saw the Lakota as a threat, but she knew there was more to their story. If only they could see what she had seen, understand what she had learned. Back at the farm, Evelyn went about her chores, her mind still on the events in town. She felt a growing resolve to do something, to find a way to share Nashota's stories. She wanted to build a bridge of understanding, a connection between the settlers and the Lakota. That evening, as she sat by the fire again, Evelyn picked up a notebook. She began to write, her pen moving across the pages. She wrote about Nashota, his journey, and the stories he had shared. She described their time together, the bond they had formed. Evelyn wrote late into the night, the words flowing freely. She wanted to capture the essence of what she had learned, the lessons of kindness and empathy. As she wrote, she felt a sense of purpose, a drive to make a difference. In the days that followed, Evelyn continued to write. She filled pages with stories and reflections, her thoughts becoming clearer with each passing day. The notebook became a testament to the connection she had formed with Nashota, a record of their shared journey. As she worked on the farm, Evelyn thought about how to share her writings with the town. She knew it would not be easy. The townspeople were set in their ways, their views shaped by years of mistrust. But she believed in the power of stories, the ability to change minds and open hearts. One afternoon, as she sat on the porch, Evelyn had an idea. She would organize a gathering at her farm, a chance for people to come together and hear her stories. It would be a simple affair with food and conversation. She hoped it would be a starting point, a way to foster understanding. Evelyn set about planning the gathering, her determination growing. She sent out invitations, reaching out to those she thought might be open to listening. She knew not everyone would come, but she was hopeful that some would be curious enough to attend. As the day of the gathering approached, Evelyn felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She had never done anything like this before, but she felt it was important. She wanted to honor Nashota and the bond they had formed. She wanted to make a difference, however small. On the day of the gathering, the weather was clear and bright. Evelyn prepared food, setting up tables and chairs outside. As the afternoon wore on, people began to arrive, their faces a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Evelyn welcomed them warmly, her heart full of hope. She led them to the tables, encouraging them to eat and talk. As they settled in, she began to share her stories, her voice steady and clear. She spoke of Nashota, his journey, and the lessons she had learned. She shared his stories, the struggles and hopes of the Lakota people. As she spoke, she saw the expressions of the townspeople change. Some listened intently, others appeared thoughtful. Evelyn continued, her words carrying the weight of truth and empathy. She hoped to plant a seed of understanding, a spark of change. As the gathering came to an end, she felt a sense of fulfillment. She had done her part, taken a step towards bridging the divide. As the sun set, the townspeople began to leave, their minds full of new thoughts. Evelyn watched them go, her heart hopeful. She knew change would not come overnight, but she believed in the power of stories to make a difference. She had shared her journey, and in doing so had honored the connection she had formed with Nashota. After the gathering, Evelyn noticed a change in herself and in her interactions with the townspeople. The meeting had planted a seed of curiosity and understanding. People seemed more open, their conversations tinged with a hint of reflection. Evelyn felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing she had taken a step towards bridging the gap between two worlds. Life on the farm continued, but Evelyn's routine now held a deeper sense of purpose. She felt more connected to the land and the people around her. The stories she had shared brought a new perspective, one that valued empathy and kindness. Each day, she found herself thinking about how to continue this journey of understanding. One morning, as she tended to the animals, Evelyn noticed a rider approaching. She watched with interest as the figure drew nearer, recognizing the familiar silhouette. It was Nashota, his horse moving gracefully across the dusty plains. Evelyn felt a surge of joy at his return. She had not expected to see him again, yet here he was, a reminder of the bond they had formed. She waved as he approached, her heart light with happiness. Nashota dismounted, a quiet smile on his face. Evelyn greeted him warmly, offering him water and a place to rest. They sat on the porch, the sun casting a warm glow over the farm. Evelyn felt a sense of peace, grateful for his presence. Nashota spoke of his journey, the places he had been, and the people he had met. Evelyn listened intently, her mind painting pictures of distant lands and new experiences. She was eager to hear his stories, to learn more about the world beyond her farm. As they talked, Evelyn shared the events of the gathering, her voice filled with excitement. She spoke of the townspeople, their reactions, and the conversations that had followed. Nashota listened, his eyes thoughtful and attentive. Evelyn explained how the meeting had been a step towards understanding, a chance to share the stories he had entrusted to her. She described the change she had noticed, the small but significant shifts in attitudes. Nashoda nodded, his expression one of quiet approval. Their conversation turned to the future, the possibilities that lay ahead. Evelyn expressed her desire to continue building connections to foster a sense of community between the settlers and the Lakota. Nashoda agreed, his voice filled with a quiet determination. They spent the afternoon sharing ideas, discussing ways to bring people together. Evelyn suggested organizing more gatherings, perhaps with the Lakota participating. She envisioned a space where stories could be shared and friendships formed. Nashoda offered his support, promising to speak with his people about the idea. He believed in the power of stories, the ability to change hearts and minds. Together, they planned the next steps, their shared vision becoming clearer. As the sun began to set, Nashoda prepared to leave. Evelyn walked with him to the gate, her heart full of hope. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for his friendship, for the journey they had embarked on together. Nashoda mounted his horse, pausing to look back at her. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. Evelyn felt a sense of calm, knowing they were moving towards something meaningful. In the days that followed, Evelyn continued to reach out to the townspeople. She spoke with those who had attended the gathering, encouraging them to share their experiences with others. She wanted to keep the conversation going, to build on the momentum they had created. Evelyn also spent time writing, capturing the stories and ideas that filled her mind. The notebook had become a treasured companion, a place where she could reflect and plan. She wrote about her hopes for the future, the connections she wished to strengthen. One afternoon, as she sat on the porch, Evelyn received a visitor. It was Tom, the rancher who had been vocal about his concerns at the gathering. He approached with a hesitant smile, his hat in hand. Evelyn greeted him warmly, inviting him to sit. She could see he was nervous, unsure of what to say. She waited patiently, giving him the space to gather his thoughts. Tom spoke of the gathering, how it had changed his perspective. He admitted that he had been wary of the Lakota, guided by fear and misunderstanding. But hearing Evelyn's stories had opened his eyes to a different reality. Evelyn listened, her heart swelling with hope. Tom's words were a testament to the power of stories, the ability to bridge divides and create understanding. She encouraged him to share his new perspective with others, to help spread the message of empathy and kindness. Their conversation was a turning point, a sign that change was possible. Evelyn felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing her efforts were making a difference. She thanked Tom for his honesty, grateful for his willingness to learn and grow. As he left, Evelyn felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She knew there was still much work to be done, but she was hopeful. The journey towards understanding was a long one, but they were taking steps in the right direction. Evelyn continued her work on the farm, her heart full of optimism. She looked forward to the future, to the gatherings and conversations yet to come. She knew Nashoda would return, and they would continue their shared mission. With each passing day, Evelyn felt more connected to the world around her. She had found a sense of purpose, a calling that brought her joy and contentment. The path ahead was uncertain, but she was ready to face it with courage and determination. As the sun set each evening, Evelyn sat on the porch, reflecting on the journey she had begun. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the people and experiences that had shaped her. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but she was not alone. Evelyn had found her place in the world, a place where stories and connections mattered. She was part of something bigger, a movement towards understanding and unity. And she knew with each step they were moving closer to a brighter future. 2 days passed after Evelyn's last conversation with Tom. The farm was quiet and her days were filled with the usual chores. But Evelyn felt a sense of anticipation, the feeling that something important was about to happen. She continued to write in her notebook, capturing her thoughts and plans for future gatherings. On the morning of the third day, Evelyn was in the barn when she heard a distant sound. It was the rhythmic beat of hooves, a sound that grew louder as it approached. She stepped outside, shading her eyes against the sun, and saw a line of riders coming toward her farm. Evelyn's heart quickened as she recognized Nashoda at the head of the group. He rode with confidence, his horse moving smoothly across the land. Behind him were several other riders, their faces calm and serious. Evelyn felt a mix of excitement and curiosity as she watched them approach. The riders stopped near the house, dismounting with ease. Nashoda greeted Evelyn with a nod, his expression warm and familiar. The other riders stood respectfully, their eyes taking in the surroundings. Evelyn felt a sense of respect and gratitude for their presence. Lakota introduced the riders as his friends and fellow Lakota warriors. They had come to show their gratitude for Evelyn's kindness and her efforts to build understanding. Evelyn felt a deep sense of honor, knowing that her actions had reached beyond her small community. As they gathered in the yard, Evelyn noticed a group of townspeople approaching. Word had spread quickly, and curiosity had drawn them to the farm. Evelyn watched as they approached with a mix of interest and hesitation. The townspeople stopped a short distance away, their eyes on the Lakota riders. Evelyn could sense their uncertainty, the old fears mingling with a desire to understand. She knew this was a pivotal moment, a chance to bridge the divide between the two groups. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. She welcomed everyone to the farm, expressing her hope that they could share stories and learn from each other. She spoke of the gatherings she had organized, the connections she hoped to foster. Lakota followed, his words measured and respectful. He spoke of the Lakota's desire for peace and understanding, their willingness to build friendships with the settlers. His voice carried the weight of sincerity, a promise of goodwill. The townspeople listened, their expressions softening. Evelyn watched as they began to relax, their curiosity overcoming their fear. She felt a sense of pride, knowing that her efforts were making a difference. The Lakota riders shared their own stories, speaking of their lives and traditions. They spoke of the land and its importance to their people, their hopes for the future. The townspeople listened with interest, their eyes opening to a new perspective. As the conversations continued, Evelyn noticed a change in the atmosphere. The initial tension had eased, replaced by a sense of camaraderie. People were talking and laughing, their voices mingling in the warm afternoon air. Evelyn moved among the groups, encouraging the dialogue. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her farm had become a place of connection and understanding. The barriers that had once seemed insurmountable were beginning to crumble. As the sun dipped low in the sky, the gathering slowly came to an end. The Lakota riders prepared to leave, their mission of peace accomplished. Evelyn felt a sense of gratitude for their presence and their willingness to share their stories. Lakota approached Evelyn, his expression one of respect and friendship. He thanked her for her efforts, for opening her heart and her home to them. Evelyn felt a warmth in her chest, knowing that their bond had grown stronger. The townspeople also expressed their gratitude, their voices filled with newfound respect. They spoke of their changed perspectives, their desire to continue building connections. Evelyn felt a sense of hope, knowing that the seeds of understanding had been planted. As the riders departed, the townspeople lingered, their conversations continuing. Evelyn watched them with a smile, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. She knew there was still work to be done, but this was a significant step forward. In the days that followed, Evelyn continued to nurture the connections she had helped to create. She organized more gatherings, each one bringing settlers and the Lakota closer together. The conversations were rich with stories and ideas, a testament to the power of understanding. Evelyn's farm became a symbol of hope, a place where differences were celebrated and friendships formed. She felt a sense of purpose, knowing that her efforts were making a real impact. One evening, as she sat on her porch, Evelyn reflected on the journey she had undertaken. She thought of Lakota and the bond they had formed, the stories that had brought them together. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the experiences that had shaped her. Evelyn knew that the path to understanding was a long one, but she was committed to seeing it through. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that her actions were making a difference in the lives of others. As the stars filled the night sky, Evelyn felt a sense of peace and contentment. She knew that the world was changing, and she was proud to be a part of it. The journey was far from over, but she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With each day, the connections between the settlers and the Lakota grew stronger. Evelyn's farm became a beacon of hope, a place where stories and understanding flourished. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had helped to build a bridge between two worlds. Evelyn had found her place in the world, a place where empathy and kindness mattered. She knew that the journey would continue, but she was ready to face it with courage and determination. The future was bright, filled with the promise of unity and understanding. Tensions began to rise in the town a few weeks after the gathering. Word of the Lakota riders' visit had spread, stirring up old fears among some of the settlers. Rumors circulated, painting the peaceful meeting as something more ominous. Evelyn could sense the unease growing, a shadow over the progress they had made. One afternoon, Evelyn was in town to gather supplies. She could feel the eyes of some townspeople on her, their expressions wary and uncertain. Conversations hushed as she passed, whispers following in her wake. The air was thick with suspicion, a tension that was hard to ignore. As she approached the general store, Evelyn saw a group of people gathered outside. Tom, the rancher she had spoken with before, stood at the center. His face was serious as he addressed the crowd, his voice carrying over the murmur of voices. Evelyn paused, listening to what Tom was saying. He spoke of the need for caution, the importance of being prepared for any trouble. His words were measured, but Evelyn could hear the undercurrent of fear. He was trying to calm the townspeople, but the worry in his voice was clear. Evelyn stepped forward, determined to speak. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she knew she had to address the concerns head-on. She greeted Tom and the others, her voice steady and calm. She spoke of the gathering at her farm, the conversations that had taken place. She emphasized the Lakota's desire for peace, their willingness to build friendships with the settlers. Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of truth. Evelyn could see the doubt in some faces, the fear that lingered despite her assurances. She understood their concerns, the history that had shaped their views. But she also believed in the power of change, the possibility of understanding. As she spoke, Tom nodded, his expression thoughtful. He had seen the gathering's impact, the way it had opened minds. Evelyn could sense his support, a quiet agreement with her message. The crowd began to disperse, their conversations subdued. Evelyn watched them go, feeling a mix of hope and frustration. She knew change was slow, but she was determined to continue her efforts. Later that day, Evelyn returned to her farm, her mind busy with thoughts. She knew she needed to do more, to find a way to address the fears that lingered. She decided to organize another gathering, one that would bring the settlers and the Lakota together once more. Evelyn spent the next few days planning the event. She reached out to the townspeople, inviting them to join her at the farm. She also contacted Lakota, asking if he and his friends would come. She hoped their presence would reassure the settlers, a reminder of the peace they sought. On the day of the gathering, the sky was clear and bright. Evelyn felt a mix of excitement and nerves as she prepared the farm. She set up tables and chairs, arranging food and drinks for the guests. The air was filled with anticipation, a sense of possibility. As people began to arrive, Evelyn greeted them warmly. She could see the uncertainty in some faces, but she was hopeful. This was a chance to build on the progress they had made, to continue the journey towards understanding. Lakota and the other Lakota riders arrived, their presence a calming influence. Evelyn introduced them to the settlers, encouraging conversation and connection. She watched as people began to mingle, their initial hesitation slowly melting away. The afternoon was filled with stories and laughter, a tapestry of voices weaving together. Evelyn felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her efforts were making a difference. The barriers that had once seemed insurmountable were beginning to fall. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the gathering drew to a close. Evelyn felt a sense of peace, knowing that they had taken another step towards understanding. The connections they had formed were growing stronger, a testament to the power of empathy and kindness. Evelyn watched as the townspeople and Lakota riders said their goodbyes, their faces filled with newfound respect. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey they had undertaken, the friendships that had blossomed. In the days that followed, Evelyn continued her efforts to foster connection. She organized more gatherings, each one bringing the settlers and the Lakota closer together. The conversations were rich with stories and ideas, a testament to the power of understanding. Evelyn's farm remained a symbol of hope, a place where differences were celebrated and friendships formed. She felt a sense of purpose, knowing that her actions were making a real impact. One afternoon, as she sat on her porch, Evelyn received a visitor. It was Tom, the rancher who had been vocal about his concerns. He approached with a smile, his hat in hand. Evelyn greeted him warmly, inviting him to sit. She could see he was more at ease, his face open and friendly. She waited patiently, giving him the space to gather his thoughts. Tom spoke of the gathering, how it had further changed his perspective. He admitted that he had been wary, guided by fear and misunderstanding. But seeing the interactions between the settlers and the Lakota had opened his eyes to a different reality. Evelyn listened, her heart swelling with hope. Tom's words were a testament to the power of stories, the ability to bridge divides and create understanding. She encouraged him to share his new perspective with others, to help spread the message of empathy and kindness. Their conversation was a turning point, a sign that change was possible. Evelyn felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing her efforts were making a difference. She thanked Tom for his honesty, grateful for his willingness to learn and grow. As he left, Evelyn felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She knew there was still much work to be done, but she was hopeful. The journey towards understanding was a long one, but they were taking steps in the right direction. Evelyn continued her work on the farm, her heart full of optimism. She looked forward to the future, to the gatherings and conversations yet to come. She knew Lakota would return, and they would continue their shared mission. With each day, the connections between the settlers and the Lakota grew stronger. Evelyn's farm became a beacon of hope, a place where stories and understanding flourished. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had helped to build a bridge between two worlds. Evelyn had found her place in the world, a place where empathy and kindness mattered. She knew that the journey would continue, but she was ready to face it with courage and determination. The future was bright, filled with the promise of unity and understanding. Evelyn woke up to a bright, clear morning. The air was crisp, and the world felt full of possibilities. Today was special, a day of celebration and reflection. She had planned another gathering at her farm, one that marked the progress they had all made together. As she moved through her morning chores, Evelyn felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey she had undertaken. Her life had changed in ways she could not have imagined. Her farm had become more than just a home. It was a place of hope and connection. Evelyn prepared for the day, setting up tables and arranging food. She wanted everything to be perfect for her guests. She thought of Lakota and the Lakota riders, the friendships they had formed with the townspeople. Their presence had been a catalyst for change, a reminder of what was possible when people came together. As the morning wore on, guests began to arrive. Evelyn welcomed them with a warm smile, her heart full of joy. She saw familiar faces, people who had attended previous gatherings and had grown to understand and appreciate each other. The Lakota riders arrived, their presence a comforting reminder of the bonds they had created. Lakota greeted Evelyn with a nod, his expression one of respect and friendship. She felt a sense of peace, grateful for his continued support. The gathering was lively, filled with laughter and conversation. People mingled, sharing stories and ideas. Evelyn watched as settlers and Lakota spoke with ease, their interactions natural and genuine. The barriers that once divided them had become bridges, pathways to understanding. Evelyn felt a deep sense of fulfillment as she moved among the guests. She knew that this was the result of many small steps, each one building on the last. The journey had not been easy, but it had been worth every effort. As the afternoon unfolded, Evelyn gathered everyone together. She wanted to express her gratitude and share her hopes for the future. Her voice was clear and steady as she spoke, her words carrying the weight of her experiences. She thanked everyone for their openness and willingness to learn. She spoke of the connections they had formed, the friendships that had blossomed. She emphasized the importance of continuing their journey, of nurturing the understanding they had built. Lakota stepped forward, his voice calm and strong. He spoke of the Lakota's appreciation for the settlers' efforts, their willingness to embrace peace. He expressed hope for the future, a future where both communities could thrive together. The crowd listened intently, their faces filled with respect and admiration. Evelyn could see the impact of their words, the way they resonated with the listeners. She felt a deep sense of hope, knowing that they were moving in the right direction. As the sun began to set, the gathering slowly came to an end. People lingered, reluctant to leave the warmth and camaraderie of the farm. Evelyn watched them with a smile, her heart full of gratitude for the day they had shared. Lakota approached Evelyn, his expression thoughtful. He thanked her for her efforts, for creating a space where understanding could flourish. Evelyn felt a warmth in her chest, knowing that their bond had grown stronger. Before he left, Lakota presented Evelyn with a beautifully crafted necklace. It was a token of gratitude from his people, a symbol of protection and respect. Evelyn accepted it with tears in her eyes, touched by the gesture. As the guests departed, Evelyn reflected on the journey she had undertaken. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had helped to create something meaningful. Her farm had become a beacon of hope, a place where people could come together and learn from each other. In the days that followed, Evelyn continued her work, her heart full of optimism. She knew the journey was not over, but she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that her actions were making a difference. Evelyn's farm remained a symbol of unity, a place where stories and understanding flourished. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had helped to build a bridge between two worlds. As she sat on her porch one evening, Evelyn reflected on the journey she had begun. She thought of Lakota and the bond they had formed, the stories that had brought them together. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the experiences that had shaped her. Evelyn knew that the path to understanding was a long one, but she was committed to seeing it through. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that her actions were making a difference in the lives of others. As the stars filled the night sky, Evelyn felt a sense of peace and contentment. She knew that the world was changing, and she was proud to be a part of it. The journey was far from over, but she was ready to face it with courage and determination. With each day, the connections between the settlers and the Lakota grew stronger. Evelyn's farm became a beacon of hope, a place where stories and understanding flourished. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had helped to build a bridge between two worlds. Evelyn had found her place in the world, a place where empathy and kindness mattered. She knew that the journey would continue, but she was ready to face it with courage and determination. The future was bright, filled with the promise of unity and understanding. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.